Welcome to Real Estate Coaching Radio, starring award-winning real estate coaches and #1 international best-selling authors, Tim and Julie Harris. This is the #1 daily radio show for realtors looking for a no BS, authentic, real-time coaching experience. What's really working in today's market, how to generate more leads, make more money, and have more time for what you love in your life. And now your hosts, Tim and Julie Harris.
We are back, and we've got a fantastic, very practical and tactical podcast for you for today and for tomorrow. What we're focusing on is your open house profit playbook, how to generate leads and seal more deals. Now, where are we getting back to the stuff that actually puts you into action and makes you money? Because this is the best time of year to be in action doing those activities, because most of your competitors are basting their turkeys. That's what you do with the turkey, right?
Yes, you baste it, you carve it, you serve it. Yes.
Exactly.
And also remember that many surveys prior to the election, where the surveys were asking future buyers, people who self-identified as going to buy in the next 6 months or less, something like 40% of them said they were, quote, waiting till after the election. So here's a question. Where are all of them right now? I bet they're circling open houses.
I have to say, we did a little, I think, impromptu podcast. It wasn't what we had planned to do yesterday, on essentially the ramifications of a Trump absolute grand slam house cleaning election results and what effect it would have on housing. And the feedback we had on it was very positive. If you haven't listened to yesterday's podcast, make sure you go back and listen to it. We don't do politics on this podcast. We're tempted to, obviously, but we never do. Because like you, our job is to be of service to everyone, whether they're Republicans or they're Democrats. And let's just accept the fact that that is your mission in life. And as such, make sure you play it in the middle of the road. And a lot of you appreciated the fact that we did that yesterday on the show. So go back and listen to that one. In the meantime, let's get into action. And the podcast that we're doing today and tomorrow is going to help you certainly do that. I want to start out by saying this, and before Julie gets to her first point, don't use the fact that you might not have any for sale listings right now as an excuse not to do an open house. You can borrow listings from other listing agents. You can borrow listings from other listing agents of other brokerages in most states. And you can also, guess what? Hold no construction homes open too. So don't just immediately, emotionally, mentally tune out of the topic today and tomorrow. Otherwise, financially, you're going to lose out. So Julie, let's go to point #1, which is pick the perfect house.
That's right. So again, this is your open house profit playbook, your open house system, part 1, point 1. Pick the perfect house. Choose wisely, grasshopper. First-time move-up homes are the sweet spot. Think about great neighborhoods, popular school districts, and fabulous curb appeal. If the house is tough to find or has zero parking, multiple gates, complicated instructions, well, skip it, because you're not going to get any traffic in that situation.
The old rule for that, and it goes for virtually everything in life, the more steps you ask someone to take, and I mean, and for the sake of going to an open house, we mean it quite literally, right? Mm-hmm. But the more times you guys have to click, the more steps you have to take, go to this website, go to that website, the less likely you are to get past the first step, and that's especially true in open houses. So really important that if you're in an area where it's got just an absolute ton of condos or apartments, and there's doormans, and there's park here, walk 15 miles this direction or that direction, you're probably not going to have very many takers to your open house. So plan accordingly and choose wisely. Choose a building, if you're in that scenario, that has the least resistance to get to somebody to the front door. But ideally, you're in a neighborhood. So if you're selling in different communities, a real strong suggestion would be hold an open house that's either going to be a first-time home buyer house, but ideally you want a move-up house. And a move-up house is going to serve you in many ways. You're going to capture, obviously, the first-time buyer that's moving up, and maybe you're going to capture that first-time seller that was previously a first-time buyer that's moving up to the move-up house, which means you might get a listing from them in addition to the fact they might buy the listing or another listing from you, as a buyer. You guys get the point? And then that move-up seller is probably going to do another transaction. So if you're going to choose to do an open house, try to focus on the move-up price range. And if you don't have any easily move-up price range homes to hold open, then do the first-time home buyer house. But do choose wisely, and again, make sure you choose something that has the least resistance to get people in the front door.
That's right, and that's why it's point #1, because if you mess up this point, the rest of the points don't matter.
Right. I mean, people have followed, basic suggestions. All this stuff should seem very obvious, and we're trying to keep it very obvious so none of you can create any real mental roadblocks to doing this type of work. Because in the right scenario with the right house, doing an open house, especially this time of year, is like printing money. We have coaching clients that are doing these, and they do these Saturdays and Sundays. They follow our instructions. They do the work, and they get massive results. What I really love, Julie, is when they send us the pictures of people lining up outside the front door to get into the house because they chose wisely.
Love that. All right, and because they did point number 2, sign it like you mean it. Use at least 10 directional signs. More are okay, but at least 10 directional signs to lead people straight to that front door. Got friendly neighbors? Ask to place a sign on their lawn with a quick, who do you know who'd love to buy this place? Bonus tip, bandit signs can be an affordable way to up your signage game. Don't use that as an excuse. Bandit signs, the cheap corrugated ones are very inexpensive.
All right, let's drill down on that one and that point. It seems like a silly point because we're talking about signs, but there's some magic embedded to that point. Number 1, make sure you ask the neighbors before you put a sign, even in the city side of the sidewalk, right? So the sidewalk, between the sidewalk and the street, is generally considered public thoroughfare. You can put signs in there without asking. But I want you to ask anyway, because what you're going to discover if you ask is the seller's really or the owner of that particular property is really going to appreciate you having asked. And they're actually going to tell you that other agents have been using their corner lot forever to place signs without asking. And because you asked, you actually will form a relationship, and that person can become a future transaction or at least a good referral source for you. Do not just simply stick signs in people's yards. Even if it's legally allowed, it's going to backsplash on you. Now, I'll give you another idea. Definitely, to Julie's point, put out a ton of open house signs. And what Julie and I did is we had these corrugated signs, and you can find these online quite easily. And they were in the shape of a house. And our sign said Harris Tour of Homes. And so what we do is we usually would try to hold 2 or 3 homes open on a Sunday, and each would be held open for maybe 2 hours. We put a sign in front of the house on, the first one that's going to be held open, say from 11 till 1, and the next one 1 till 4. You guys get the idea? And then what we do is we'd say, well, this is going to be, we'd put the sign out on Thursday. This one's open from 11 till 1 or 11 till noon. And then the next one is going to be open. You guys follow along here. And then we put out a ton of open house signs with directionals to all of them, but then it says very specifically when the house was going to be held open. Harris Tour of Homes. If you have a lot of listings, this is a killer idea to really blanket a neighborhood in a meaningful way. And then if you don't have staff, you just go from one open house to the next, to the next, to the next. And what you'll discover is a lot of the people that went to the first one will be waiting for you at the second one, will be waiting for you on the third one. And that's going to be, again, a really very powerful way for you to make a massive impression of being proactive in a marketplace. And remember, this time of year, most of your competitors are not working, or at least not working very hard. They've rationalized it's a slow time of year. Well, it's a slow time of year for them because they're not doing anything. Make it a busy time of year for you. And again, no competition means less noise in the channel, which means more opportunity for you to make a huge impression on all the sellers in that community who are thinking about, who am I going to list my house with in the spring? You following along on all of this, guys? This is the time to shine. Point number 3.
Point number 3, know your stuff. Arm yourself with a cheat sheet on the property's neighborhood and competing areas. Again, whether that's your listing or you're borrowing a listing. Know the following: the latest active, pending, and sold listings, the average days on the market for a house like you're holding open, and list to sell price ratios. Be the agent who knows their stuff, not the one Googling stats mid-conversation or saying, I don't know that, I have to get back to you. Know your stuff. Show your value.
And don't be embarrassed to have to look at something. Always just if you're, worried that they're going to think ill of you because you have to actually check your facts, you can sort of, I think, say something along the lines of, well, let me check to make sure I'm giving you the right factual information. I want to be accurate for you, those types of things.
That's fine.
And I wanted to there was another point we should have had on here, Julie. You do a neighbors only open house. So what you should consider doing is, if you're going to do an open house this Sunday, and let's say you're not going to do our tour of homes, you're going to only hold one house open. You're going to hold open from noon till 4 or whatever. Go and make some nice invitations. There's examples of these on Premier Coaching. Make some nice invitations. It doesn't have to be fancy, but don't make it look trashy. And go and knock on all the neighbors' doors. And by all, I mean as many of the homes as you possibly can knock on. And do that starting on Thursday. And let them know you're going to do a neighbors-only open house. And the neighbors-only open house is starting at, say, 10 a.m. or 9 a.m. And then you're going to hold the neighbors only open from 9 till noon. And so they can pop by and, get to know you. You get to know them. And what else are you going to do? The people that show up are probably going to be the ones that are thinking about putting their houses on the market in the spring. So again, killer opportunity opportunity for you to really set yourself apart in that particular community. This is how you dominate going into the spring. Imagine how many listing leads you're going to have if you just follow one of the ideas we've given to you so far.
That's right. Well, I have to give you an example and a great shout out to Kristen Holly in Fort Worth and her husband Greg, who also recently got licensed and joined the Kristen Holly team. They're doing this together now. Kristen has not one, not two, not three, but 4 listings, not just in the same neighborhood, but on the same street. Why?
That's awesome.
Because she does all of this stuff. She typically door knocks. She door knocks before the open houses. She invites neighbors. She does the neighbors only open house. She has created all of that business for herself. And by the way, she's not paying a single referral fee on any of that.
So I'm having this conversation with someone that basically wanted to be personally coached by you the other day. And we're talking about lead generation because I wanted to find out how their brain was wired and what they actually thought. And so when we started talking about doing the real work of real estate like we're talking about now, and this is somebody who was, they did a lot of volume and they made a lot of create a lot of revenue, but they didn't have a lot of net profit. So they were moving houses, selling houses. They had a team, but they weren't really making any real net income. Every year they barely paid their taxes.
Right.
And that's a pretty common story, unfortunately, with large teams.
It's true.
So I'm having this conversation, and the agent then, basically it's a lady, she digs in her heels, and she said, well, I would rather do one-to-many versus one-to-one. Well, I've heard all this before, of course. And what she's saying is she doesn't want to do the real work of real estate because somewhere along the lines, someone had fooled her into believing that if you send out one email to 1,000 people, it's more effective than having one conversation with one motivated seller. She, in other words, has been spending all kinds of money and time on essentially trying to become a big, doing constant PSAs, public service announcements about houses for sale, versus actually going and having meaningful conversations with people that actually do a transaction. She would rather build big, huge funnels than she would actually have, real conversations with real folks about doing real deals. You have to get your mindset right about that. The problem with doing the big mass marketing, branding, and all the rest of it is everyone else does it as well. And humans nowadays want one-to-one direct conversations with folks. They do not want to be dripped on. They do not want to be emailed to. They do not want to be TikToked. Oh, and by the way, with the new president, you can rest assured that TikTok is going to be banned from the United States. I feel sorry for all of you that invested so much money in TikTok videos. But the reality of it is that we've been warning you about that for 5 years. So again, go back to learning the real basic skills of having meaningful conversations, and you will be amazed, A, how much more money you make because you're not buying your business anymore, and B, believe it or not, how much more time you have. What are you talking about, Tim? I have to go out and have conversations with neighbors. Yes, but those conversations, if you talk with, say, 50 people, inviting them to the open house, you're going to root out probably 5 or 10 real listing leads, which won't have referral fees attached to it. And let's say you're in a marketplace where the average commission is, 15 grand. You've just created 75,000 potentially if you take those listings, not to mention the other transactions that come from that. You don't think that's a more efficient time than learning latest Facebook ad campaign? Come on now.
I have so many conversations and so much feedback from coaching clients who there's quite a variety of this working. I had one tell me when she had like a open house tomorrow directional sign in the front yard. She was out pounding that sign. The across the street neighbor comes over. Are you the agent for this? Yes, I'm holding it open tomorrow. What questions can I answer for you? Well, can you come over right now because I'm the next one that's going to sell around here and I really need a price for my house. Can you talk to me about what you would do to sell it? That's because across the street, he saw her putting a directional sign for the open house.
There's no power. That's shortcuts. This type of work shortcuts all the malarkey that you guys spent so much time doing. I had another conversation with somebody else actually that was interviewing us to be their coach. And this one in particular was a Zillow Flex agent and spending a lot of money with Zillow.
A lot.
And she started telling me all of her scripts that she had to basically get the buyer, who is a Zillow agent, to not focus on the fact that Zillow sort of had sold her as being the listing agent and she wasn't.
Yeah.
In other words, the bait and the switching is something that she had just normalized in her industry, in her business. And I asked her, how does it make you feel when you essentially have to confront this, or the buyer is confronting you as to if you're the listing agent or not, and you then have to explain to them that they've been sort of baited and switched. And she was prideful of her scripts, and I guess they're effective because she was selling some houses, but she felt swarmy about it. And then I asked, what does that make you feel like about being in real estate? Do you think that's normal, that you have to do, essentially baiting and switching to get people to want to do business with you? And then she told me how much she actually hated it, and that's the reason she was calling us and wanting us to interview. I'm sorry, we were interviewing her. She was interviewing us to be her coach because she didn't want to have to act that way anymore. She actually wanted to have the real skills of real estate necessary so she could start making money consistently without paying referral fees. If you're in that same mindset, or if you're really ready to supercharge your business going into the new year, I strongly encourage you to join Premier Coaching. It doesn't cost you anything to join Premier Coaching for the first 30 days for free. Just go to premiercoaching.com or just text the word Premier to 47372 and we'll text you back a link. It's straightforward, guys. You go to Premier Coaching, you sign in, you can start joining the daily semi-private coaching calls with the Harris Certified Coach. You have access to the first of 12 levels. The first level is completely free. You get that for free. A lot of you, many of you will be absolutely amazed by the value we give you for a total cost of $0. So definitely get on that. Join right away. Go to premiercoaching.com or text the word Premier to 47372 and we'll text you back a link to join. Julie, point number 4.
Number 4, keep tabs on the competing neighborhoods and what's going on around your open house. Be the go-to expert. Know what's happening in those competing areas. Is there new construction around the corner? Are those builders throwing in buyer incentives or special financing with their better interest rates? If you can share insights like that into the surrounding neighborhoods, you're adding massive value to potential buyers. I know you remember this, but gosh, I can't even keep track of how many deals we did because we did this open house system. And because we were knowledgeable, we were nice to them, and we followed up. Even, a few months later, they would say, I remember I would hear all the time, you were the only one who talked to me during the open house, especially in first-time buyer houses. You would hear that a lot.
Julie, think about how powerful it is to basically be doing an open house in a community. How much more powerful that is than even having the best website.
It totally is. It's all face-to-face. It's high level of value. It's very personable. I really think people are craving that a lot. People spend so much time online. It is one of the reasons that the neighbors go to open houses.
Well, let's look at also, and I know we have 3 more points, so we'll get to those in a second, but if you look at, for example, the nature of the buyer that's going through open houses. Mm-hmm. Now, if it's a first-time home buyer type open house that you're holding open, you will get a fair amount of looky-loos. But if you go to the, people that haven't been to a lender yet, probably aren't qualified. But if you're going to the, the move-up price range type house, you already know they qualify because they've got a house and they probably have a ton of equity. You see how that saves you a lot of effort, worrying about whether or not you're spending time with buyers who can actually transact. So what's the nature of the buyer that's going to an open house? They already know the community that they want to live in. Thus, they're in that community on that street. They've already probably picked through neighboring communities. They know what the new construction is in most cases. In other words, these are the best buyers you can possibly come across. And again, if you're holding a move-up house for sale or open, they're also going to be obviously great sellers potentially for you as well. In other words, they have already funneled themselves down to the point where they've chosen the neighborhood, maybe even the fact that they're looking for a particular style of home. And yet, how many of you right now are listening to what we're asking you to do and saying, well, I'll just buy some more damn leads? The bought leads are the least motivated. That's the reason they are the most frustrating to you. That's the reason that, a lot of the bot leads are mostly new first-time home buyer leads. They're not the real primo leads. The real primo leads will always come from doing open houses and, in those move-up type price ranges. You can also do this in luxury price ranges, but the problem there is if it's too fancy of a house, too luxury, it's going to also create a lot of traffic from people that are just looky-loos. That's the reason the sweet spot's that middle price range, whatever that is in your marketplace.
100% agree with that. All right, point number 5 is just a quick reminder, and then we'll go to point number 6. Smile because you are probably on camera. This goes for open houses and normal showings. Sellers might be watching through security cameras, so keep yourself very professional and positive. They'll appreciate your professionalism. It could even win you their future business in the case of showings if their listing expires.
Now, I'm going to add to that, Julie. So if you're holding a house open and you don't have another assistant or somebody that's going to be helping you, you do not follow them around in the house. Again, we give you all these specific drilled down instructions in Premier Coaching. This is just an overview of our open house system. But don't follow them around. That's a huge mistake, not to mention the fact that you'll miss people coming and going from the front door. And then you could have people in the house that you didn't even welcome. So what you want to do if it's in a house where the sellers are still occupying the house, you definitely want to follow the checklist, things like telling them to remove all the drugs from their medicine cabinets, any valuables, anything like that somebody might, it could be a kid. I mean, we had that happen in open houses for some kid just palmed something that was shiny kind of thing. Don't assume that people are going to be watching out or watching their children and whatnot. But you are going to get the occasional, loon that's going to come in and go right to the master bedroom. And it happens all the time. You always read it on the MLS's warnings on Monday. A couple comes in, the guy stands and talks to the agent the whole time. The lady walks through and just raids all the medicine cabinets type of thing. One of the things that we've been coaching agents to do is you put up your own camera system in the house and you put it in strategic places, but make the cameras obvious so that, people can actually see them. That way, if someone's walking around the house, they'll see the red lights on. They'll see that they're being recorded, and you can watch them on your mobile phone. You can use like Blink, and you can set up a non-local system like that just to basically add an extra layer of security. Now, why is all this really powerful? Because you could tell a seller about this when you're competing on a listing appointment and tell them that you're going to secure their house during the open house. This is especially powerful if you have another agent. Agents will do this. It's so dumb because it's so easy to beat in competition. But other agents will say, well, I don't do open houses because blah, blah, blah. You don't do open houses because you're lazy. That's just the bottom line. Yeah. So I don't do open houses because of blah, blah, blah. You're going to say, well, Mr. Seller, and you're going to share with them all the facts about the buyers going through open houses that you've hopefully just learned today. And then you're going to say, well, here's what I do to, essentially make it so that it's secure. I'm going to give you a checklist of things you should do prior to the open house. Again, this is assuming they're still living there. And I'm actually going to put up some cameras, 3 or 4 cameras, that are going to be very obvious that the prospective people walking through the house are going to be able to see. These cameras all have mics. And if, they're walking around the house, it's going to be recorded what's going on. And they're going to know it's being recorded, what's going on. And I'm going to be able to watch them on my phone. Or you, frankly, can watch them on your phone, too, because I'll give you access. That is a killer listing tool. It's just an added thing you can put in your listing toolbox.
Yes, and very inexpensive. It's a great tool, as you said, and a point of differentiation. So point number 6, capture every lead like it's gold, because they are. Use an app or an old school sign-in book and follow up immediately after the open house.
I've thought about this point a lot, Julie. Mm-hmm. I don't like the apps. I've decided.
I don't like them either. I think that became a thing during COVID. I like the old school sign-in books.
And I'm going to tell you why.
Sure.
I re-listened to a book I've read probably 20 times called Influence. I don't remember the guy's name. Everyone's going to ask me about it. Somebody find the guy's name. And one of the things he really drills down on is reciprocity. And again, we read this book originally when we were... Okay, here it is. Influence, New and Expanded. Let me find the guy's name. By Robert Cialdini. Okay, so you guys can all listen to that book.
Cialdini.
Yeah, and again, I've consumed this numerous times. He just did an updated version. I can't tell, honestly, where he's updated it. It just reads like the old one. But here's the point. When you walk into a Starbucks and there's a jar there, they seed the jar ahead of time with money. And you guys know this too. If you walk into a Starbucks or any place where there's a tip jar and there's no money in the tip jar, chances are you're not putting money in there.
Right.
But if it's loaded with money, chances are you're putting money in there. And that essentially it's social proof, but also it's a little bit of reciprocity. So you're not going to want to be the only one that didn't actually tip after all these other people did as well.
I know where you're going with this.
It's a subconscious thing. So what you want to do is you want to have an actual sign-in book. And you want to have an actual sign-in book that's accumulative. In other words, all the open houses you've previously done, don't have them dated, but just have a fresh page. And so people can flip through the open house, because that's what the open house registry, that's what they'll do. They'll walk in, they'll see all the other people that have registered, and they're going to register themselves as well. With an app, again, remember we were saying at the top, that's too many steps. With the app, make it so that, they're going to, I have to do this, I have to do this, I have to type this, I have to touch this. Nope, sign in here, and they're going to see all the other people that signed in. There's no seeing what other people did in an app, is there? There's no visual proof of, the tips in the tip jar in an app. But there is on even a yellow tablet of paper or a sign-in book. And you can have a sign that says the seller requests that all buyers register. And that's it. That's
all guests sign in, yes.
That all guests sign in. And that's all it has to say. You can buy all this stuff on Amazon. Very inexpensive and very powerful.
Yes, and I believe that it should be a nice-looking guest book. And you can find all kinds of that sort of thing on Amazon. When we were on our big trip this summer, did you notice how all the nice hotels had guest books and you had your email? Would you like us to communicate with you? And of course, out of curiosity, don't you flip back and see the little blurbs and stories that people did? I think it's got that sort of vibe to it. It's more friendly. And to your point, if you've already got somebody that signed in that didn't write Mickey Mouse, they put their real name, their real email address, their real phone number, it's like the tip jar. You're giving permission that, hey, it's okay, it's expected, it's normal to sign into this guest book.
Now, the other idea is like the tip jar. You can have them do something similarly, but there's a jar, literally, where they have filled out a little, little short form, and it's for a raffle you're doing that day or some sort of giveaway or something, right?
Coach Rochelle talks about that a lot in Premier Coaching.
Yep. So you're going to have a jar, and it's going to be clear. You're going to have a lot of people who have previously put their information in said jar. At the end of the day, they're going. You remember when we did that at a really nice open house and we gave away a TV?
Yeah.
Okay. So you're going to basically have it so that at the end of the day, you're going to do a drawing, and you're going to pull out a name, and that person's going to win whatever it is. So that's another way, because then you're still getting them to register. You've gamified it, and they're also basically going to feel that social proof from the, air quoting here, tip jar, and most likely they're going to want to actually contribute and participate.
And give their real phone number.
Yeah,
because they're going to win something, right? Okay, so point number 7, our final point today. Knock, knock, who's there? The neighbors, of course. They're often curious, as we've discussed. And they know whether it's them or somebody else who's looking to move soon. So, and you touched on this earlier, door knock the day before, door knock the day of. Who do you know who you can turn into your neighbors? Who do you know who would love to live in this neighborhood, who I should be calling and inviting to the open house? It's a friendly way to introduce yourself and to build rapport and to get those very obvious free leads.
Don't overanalyze anything that we've told you today. Don't over-worry about the points. And don't over-worry about the scripts. Don't over-worry about anything. What you have to do is go out there and just be yourself, being a real estate professional. And if you have any sort of head junk about that, the only way ultimately you're going to fix your mindset about your resistance to go out there and be yourself as a real estate professional is to go out there and guess what? Be yourself as a real estate professional. And when you see yourself, hear yourself, feel yourself, answering people's questions and essentially interacting with folks, even if you're a keyboard jockey and you've been generating all your leads online, something magical is going to happen inside of you. You're going to have a switch is going to be flipped inside your brain, and you're going to say, you know what? This is actually quite enjoyable. It turns out this is a hell of a lot more fun than wasting all that time building funnel after funnel after funnel. I actually can go out there and generate referral-free leads so that you guys run a funnel. You got to run ads through the funnel. Otherwise, what's the point of having your funnel? Then you got to spend money, and then you got to wait, and then you got to tweak, and then you got to A/B test, and then you got to make sure your copywritten's right.
Also, that's not just your lead.
It's not just your lead. That same person that you're funneling from the ad that you ran, that you then had to spend a whole bunch of time trying to get the ad to run. Oh, I bought a bunch of ads. A whole bunch of people bought the same ads. They're all running the same ads. They're all going to similar funnels. You guys get it? If you want to make it so that you are just like everyone else and there's no way to differentiate you in the marketplace, do what everyone else is doing. If you want to make yourself obsolete and irrelevant, do essentially appear like what everyone else appears like. You're basically a commodity at that point. There's nothing special about you. Special comes from the conversation I had with an agent when she was putting a sign in a yard and she was inviting me to the open house. That is a connection that is so much more powerful than the best written email. Come on, folks, you know it's true. This is the best time of year to do the real work of real estate. We strongly encourage you to listen to tomorrow's podcast. In the meantime, and that's for day 2 of today's topic. In the meantime, make sure you join Premier Coaching. Just go to premiercoaching.com. Premiercoaching.com is your source for all things that you need to make 2025 your best year in real estate. Have a fantastic day. We'll talk to you on the show tomorrow.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.